is John Loar and I am writing this to my grandson Brian Fitch. You wanted to know what it was like to be a draftee during the time of the Vietnamese War. I'll start with the first time I ever heard the word Vietnam mentioned. It was during my senior year in high school, in my world history class, in 1963. The United States was already involved in the war at this time. I graduated in the spring of 1963 and was already planning on attending college in the fall. I did just that and attended Bliss Business College and was studying to be a certified public accountant. During the summer break of 1964, I decided not to go back and instead of college, I had a number of jobs. I continued to work on the farm and ran a temporary mail route. After the temporary mail route ended, I left the farm and got a job delivering milk house to house for the Weatherall Dairy located in Pickerington, Ohio. If you'll have it, I was living the life of Riley, delivering milk and running around with your grandmother Kathy. Then, in October 1965, the letter came from the U.S. government saying that I was being drafted. The letter stated that I was to take a bus from my hometown of Asheville to the old Fort Hayes building in Columbus for testing. I was to bring nothing but myself and given no further directions. The rest was in limbo. I done as told, and much to my surprise, when I showed up at Fort Hayes there were about 200 men there, counting those that rode the bus with me. They greeted us, told us to form 10 lines, and then told us that we were there for physical exams and for various tests. We then were told to strip and go line by line for our physical exam. Just imagine 200 men from all walks of life and occupations standing there in their birthday suit. I quickly realized that was just the beginning. By 5 o'clock that evening 200 men were sworn into the military. Of the 250 went to the Marine Corps and the balance were Army. I was one of the Army, and at 6 o'clock those that were Army boarded a plane and headed to Fort Jackson, South Carolina. We were at Fort Jackson for 5 days. During the 5 days we were issued our Army clothes, got a number of medical shots, took more tests and pulled KP. After 5 days, we left Fort Jackson and were bused to Fort Gordon, Georgia. I was to get my basic training there. Upon arrival, we were assigned to 5 platoons of 40 men. Were shown our barracks and introduced to our drill sergeant. We were trained physically, weaponry and basic survival. Respect for those in charge is something you learn quickly. Along with daily training came KP and fire guard duty. One trip to the commissary was all we were allowed, and that was to get personal essentials. We were there 5 weeks and Christmas leave consisting of 5 days was allowed. We had to leave and return in our dress uniform. I was at Fort Gordon for 8 weeks, and then graduation day rolled around along with orders for your next tour of duty. Everyone thought that since we were draftees we were certainly going to infantry, but that wasn't the case. I, along with some others, were sent to Fort Eustis, Virginia for helicopter mechanical school. At Fort Eustis we were allowed to have a vehicle on base, knowing I was going to be there for 12 weeks studying helicopter power train. Most 68D20. I and a friend decided that we would fly home and get my car. That's just what we did, and we, along with others, occasionally were home every weekend. We did that by paying people to take our details if we had them. It was by the grace of God that we made those trips, and friends you could trust. I finished the course the top in my class and had the choice of having my picture taken with the base commander or receiving a plaque. I chose the plaque, received my orders pertaining my next assignment, and a 30-day leave. My next assignment was Vietnam and I was to check in at Fort Dix, New Jersey. At the end of my 30-day leave I reported to Fort Dix and found out that there were 150 more men that reported for the flight to Vietnam, and one of them was the friend that I had graduated with at Fort Eustis. All of us boarded the plane and started our flight. The first place we landed was Anchorage, Alaska for fuel, and we were allowed to exit the plane. Our next stop was Toyooka, Japan, and we had to stay on the plane while it was being fueled. Our next landing was Saigon, Vietnam, and prior to landing, we were escorted by fighter jets. When we exited the plane we put in an area like a cattle lot that had a building with benches, and that's where we slept until morning. At the break of day we were loaded on trucks and taken to Vung Tau, which was a distribution place for troops. We stayed there for 2 days before getting our orders. During those 2 days we toured the city and swam in the South China Sea. I must say that I saw some pretty horrific sights during my tour of city. I got my first water buffalo burger and that was different. We finally got our orders and they assigned us to a Air Force A battalion in the Mekong Delta at a place called Cantu. We were housed in town in a French hotel. Our breakfast, lunch and dinner were served in a hotel restaurant next door, and we were trucked back and forth. We flew every day all day between Can Tao and Vung Tau, and today I can't tell what we accomplished. Other than make it known we weren't Air Force personnel. My friend was still with me at this time, and that was about to change. After about 30 days we made a flight to Vung Tau and received our final orders, and I went to Faloya and my friend went to play Cho. Upon arriving at my destination I, along with others, had to sleep in a tent and on cots until positions opened up in the hooches. Our tent blew down almost every day due to rain because we arrived during what is known as the monsoon season. The first thing I done when I arrived was learn how to drive a 5-ton tractor trailer, and eventually I was moved to the flight line. We worked 12-hour shifts. Dirty clothes were washed by the Vietnamese women. Moccasins. We paid for the luxury. We were told not to talk to them or trust them. They were trucked on base every morning, done the KP duty and washed our clothes, kept the lodging facility clean and made our beds. We also had to walk guard duty randomly. We were given a M14 and 5 shells until one of men walking guard shot a pig that had wandered on base. From that time on no ammo was issued on guard duty. I will never forget one night on guard duty. While walking guard duty I was followed by a friendly Vietnamese who was called Arvin's. What a feeling. By the way, our base was called Custer Flats because before I arrived the whole 173rd Airborne was wiped out on this place. As long as I was there we were shot at every night. My duty was to balance main and tail rotors, pack short shaft between motor and transmission along with grease trunnions. That's the swivels that connects the transmission to the blades. It was a standard fact that if you worked on the aircraft, you could be required to go on the test flight. By the way, our helicopters were called Tomahawks as a nickname, and we had a tomahawk painted on the nose. Our helicopters were B&D Model U's and we were attached to the 393rd Aviation Battalion. We flew support for the infantry and sometimes actual troops to the fight areas. I was so curious as to what was going on that I signed up to be a gunner on the mission for 21 hours so I could get an air medal. After the 21 hours expired, I didn't fly anymore as a gunner. Instead, I went back to being a mechanic, and one day as we were working, we heard this sound, blurp, blurp, and ran out of the tent and found that we were under a mortar attack. The whole base went on alert. That lasted about an hour, and after it was over, we went to the flight line to check the aircraft for damages. Luckily, we had none. We had a house of ill repute located just off base that was called Sherwood Forest. The soldiers were trucked there once a month, and sure enough you'd see them hoping to the dispensary 3 days after. I spent July the 4th between our barracks and a dumpster because of incoming fire, and Christmas of the same year with red and green food dye in the mashed potatoes. We all just wanted to go home, and that day finally arrived. We dressed in our khakis, boarded a plane, and flew to Bangkok, Thailand, where we spent our From there we flew to Hawaii and spent another hour. The facility was beautiful. From Hawaii, we flew to Fort Dix, New Jersey, and from there to Columbus. I enjoyed a 30-day leave, during which I married your Nana Kathy, and we headed out for Fort Benning, Georgia. Oh yes, I met up with my buddy that I had before, and he and his wife followed us. When we arrived at Fort Benning, we were assigned to a turbine engine squadron, and we learned how to repair turbine engines. I finished the rest of my tour of duty at Fort Benning, Georgia, and left the Army as a specialist 4th class. I have no regrets about my tour of duty other than when we came home the soldiers weren't recognized for what we done. People I met while in Vietnam includes General Westmoreland, Premier Kai and his wife. I want to thank God for watching over me and all of those who made it home safely, and our prayers are with those who gave their lives for their country.